All right, so what's up there, YouTube? Okay, so today let's talk. I want to talk to you guys about the Canon R5-C and what is this camera? Who is this camera made for? Now, I've seen a lot of reviews lately, a lot of previews, not reviews, but previews of the camera, and I've seen a lot of excuses made for the lack of some features and some of the things about it. And I've seen a lot of people call them out on it too. So I'll give credit where credit's due. If you're one of these Canon shooters and you know who you are and you've saw some of the things on it, you're like, well, how could you possibly not include things like IBIS in a video-centric camera? I gotta hand it to you. It's good that you've actually called them out on it, because there's a few of them, DP Review is one, that they made excuses for. They said, well, I can understand if it's on sticks. Now, this camera right now is sitting on sticks because I'm solo making a video of me just sitting here in front of the camera. This camera, the R5-C, the one that's about to be coming out, the one that was announced by Canon, sits right directly in the middle of a wedding and event filmmaker's camera. It's right up there with the C300 and C100. It's right in there with a cinema camera filmmaker, wedding and event filmmaker's camera, which is what I do. So it's right in there. Now, I've considered the C100, C300. I've considered these cameras in the past, and the Sonys and FX6 and stuff like that. I've considered different cameras for video specifically, but that also shoot photos. It would be nice to have a camera that does both, because I do photos. But if you did mostly videos and some photos, but mostly video, then a cinema style camera would be better suited for your needs. When I'm shooting a wedding and I'm shooting with my Z6s, I'm not always grabbing a gimbal. If I'm in the dressing room with the client and I'm in there with the bride and the bridesmaids and stuff like that, or the groom and groomsmen, I have the camera, because of the space constraints that I have my camera sitting on a monopod. Most of the time it's on a monopod, and I'm getting detail shots because I'm staying close. But a monopod is handy because it's a single stick. You just put it right down, gets you a nice straight, steady shot. But then again, sometimes you can't even get in close with the monopod. And that's the thing that I really like about the Z6, is when you want to get in close, the Z50 doesn't have IBIS. So I usually don't grab the Z50 off a monopod and carry it in there with IBIS. I normally have to put that camera on a gimbal. So that's why I use the Moza Mini P. I like using that little Moza Mini P gimbal because it's small. I can take throw the camera on there, but I prep it in advance. I have it sitting there. I pop the camera on it, and I get, a few Steadicam shots with it, gimbal shots with it, and then it goes back in the bag, or it goes off to the side. But if I'm shooting detail shots and I'm shooting detail shots with this big camera, the Z6 with the 85 millimeter, and I'm getting some shots, I don't want to, this is an unstabilized lens. Sometimes I will take the camera off the Steadicam, off the monopod, set the monopod aside, and hand hold some shots, because the camera has IBIS built in it. So I don't have to worry about it being super shaky because it has IBIS. I'm, getting a certain shot. I'm moving the camera around a little bit. I'm getting some smooth, slight motion. Nothing real big, but just slight motion. So set the camera down. It's a very needed feature. It's a feature that you would absolutely want to have in video. Even when I'm using the cameras on a gimbal, if this camera or that camera, if I have this camera with a nice wide lens, now this is about the size of a Z9 with the battery grip on it. So the Z9 is about the same size as this Z6 with the dual battery grip on it. It's close to the same size as the Z9. I will use that camera and I will put it with the wide lens and I will put it on a gimbal, the bigger Moza Air 2 or whatever it is that I've got. Anyway, I put it on the big gimbal and I will get a gimbal shot. But I don't turn the IBIS off because it gets a better, it smooths out those little steps and stuff. Like even on a gimbal, if you're walking, if you're in a field walking and you're trying to get a shot of the bride and groom, you will still get some bouncing in the steps. And the IBIS helps smooth that out. So I don't really understand why they would take off IBIS of the Canon R5-C, the cinema camera. To remove IBIS is just because they want to protect their other cameras. That's the only thing I can possibly think of to protect their other cameras. So let's compare it. Let's compare it to a camera like the Z9, which nobody's comparing it to. I haven't seen any of the reviewers mention the Z9, which is a absolutely fantastic video camera. It's fantastic. It has IBIS. It has everything. See, the other thing is it doesn't come with R5-C, doesn't have the audio adapter built on. It doesn't have the adapter handle with XLR inputs. And I've seen some people, well, you only use it for scratch audio anyway. Well, yeah, because most of the cameras that we shoot with don't capture really quality audio. So we normally use a separate microphone or a separate audio recorder on the subject, especially if we're shooting like a wed ceremony. I'm not using the on-camera audio. But there are a lot of times when using on-camera audio, if the audio was better, would be preferable. So back in the day, we used to shoot with these big cameras, the big DV cameras and the big beta cameras and, you know, stuff like that for production. The video production included cameras with balanced XLR inputs and easily accessible audio control, so you can set your levels right there, and you could take two different sources. You could have a boom mic on a table pointed towards, you know, the subject. If it's you're doing a talking head video like I'm doing here, or you're doing a video of interviews, and say you've got the camera set up on sticks and you're doing interviews, it's really handy to take an XLR cable, run it over, stick a boom mic on the table and have it pointed like this mic is pointed towards my mouth, have it pointed towards the subject, and no matter where I move the camera for different shots or whatever, I've got a perfect audio recording, or even a second audio recording. Say you put a lapel mic, a lav mic on the Talent, and you run an audio recorder or wireless audio or whatever it is you want to run, and you put a boom mic on the table. You do that so you have a backup of the audio. So you only get one chance to get this take. And I've shot literally thousands of interviews with a large format DV camera or mini DV camera that had XLR inputs on it. And that's how I would do it. I would have one mic with a wireless mic on the groom. I would use wireless back then because the audio recorders weren't as good as they are now and wouldn't fit in your pocket. They'd be big honking things that you'd have to set on the table. But I'd have a lav mic on with a wireless transmitter in his pocket, a wireless receiver on the back of the camera, going to one of the XLRs in the camera, capturing the audio in the camera, and then the other XLR I would run a cable over and stick a microphone on the table just out of the camera's view, just below the subject, pointed at him. And that way you have two forms of audio. You can pick which one. If one comes out too hot, or if the wireless breaks up or anything, you have the second audio. So I've seen people say, and Jay Christina's, by people I mean Jay Christina, oh, well, you don't use the on-camera audio ever. It's just a scratch audio track. Yeah, now, because most of the on-camera audio sucks. like the regular camera audio, most of the microphone audio, you're using a separate audio source like this that I'm plugged in now. The reason why I use the separate audio is because I'm shooting with a DSLR, which notoriously doesn't have as good audio as high quality audio. But if you're shooting with a cinema camera, the audio is supposed to be good enough in the camera, so you don't have to have a separate sound guy and a separate audio mixer and a separate thing. You can plug in your headphones to the camera, listen. That's the whole reason why we wanted headphone jacks in the camera. Listen to the audio that's being recorded and monitor the audio and be able to ride those levels if it needs to go change or something if you're doing interviews. Now, I interviewed hundreds of people over the years for Dairy Queen, Coca-Cola, Yamaha. I interviewed the CFO, the CEO of Yamaha. I've interviewed thousands of people, setting the camera up in their offices, setting the camera up, getting the audio set up. And back then, years ago, we used the camera in the audio in the camera. It was a hassle to have to separate the audio, and then I'm still not positive. That's the whole reason why DJI audio recorders and the new Rode Video Mic Go thing, the little separate wireless audio, the reason why those record audio on them also as well as doing wireless is so that you have a backup of the audio, so that you have a clear backup of the audio, just in case the levels are too hot because you can't monitor them as well as you can. What we're used to is monitoring in the camera. So what I'm getting at is, if you're making a C style cinema camera, it should have excellent XLR balanced audio inputs, separate channels, so that you can adjust it in camera, put on headphones, set one microphone on the table or whatever, a boom mic just over the talent's head, a wireless lav on the talent, wireless mic under their shirt, and be able to capture the audio and listen to it and monitor it and capture it in camera. Not as a scratch track, but as the actual track. You don't have to have a separate audio guy. It takes literally seconds to run a cable real quick, plug it in, stick the little boom stand on the table or put a boom over their head, point the mic at them. There, I'm monitoring the audio, testing 1 2 3. Okay, 3 2 1, go, and start recording the interview. So the whole reason to not have this, to not have decent audio on board is just, there's just no excuse for it. Not for a cinema camera. Now for a DSLR or a mirrorless, for one of these, yeah, you don't really need it because you're going to use you're not going to, it has a headphone jack too. Even the Z6 has a headphone jack, so you're monitoring the audio because it's actually good enough to monitor, and to if you had to use it, you could use the audio in the camera, because that's the whole reason. We heard complaints for years about the audio is not good enough in these DSLRs, and it sounds scratchy, especially the old Nikon D750 and D850. The audio didn't sound as good. It wasn't as good, so we had to capture separate audio because and the excuse was, well, they're DSLRs. Well, now you have good audio that you can capture in camera, so you don't need a separate audio recorder. That's the whole point, is not having to need a separate audio recorder to record separate audio and make it where you have to sync this stuff later in post. It's nice to be able to grab it. If you're shooting interviews and you're trying to get them fast, boom, right in the camera, right down. It's all in camera. The more you can shoot in camera and not have to edit in post, or not have to do workarounds or sync multiple tracks or sync all that stuff, the better. So if I'm shooting an interview and I've got one camera on sticks and I've got the mic and everything set up, I should be able to record the whole interview with that, and then cut to some B-roll footage with a different camera, or even with the same camera after I'm done, use the B-roll footage to insert after the fact over those clips, and insert a shot of the golf cart or the assembly line or whatever it is that you're going to insert as a B-roll footage over the top of the audio captured in camera. I don't like the excuses. And if you compare the cameras for less than $1,000 more, the Nikon Z9 seems like a way better camera. It's got IBIS. The audio's good in camera. It doesn't have the XLR inputs anyway, so neither does the C. So that's a wash. It doesn't have you're not gaining anything with better XLR audio inputs in the R5-C. It shoots ProRes RAW. It shoots 4K 60. It shoots ProRes RAW 10-bit 422 10-bit in camera. It has basically an unlimited record time, 4K 30 frames per second for 2 hours and 5 minutes or some ridiculous amount. Now I've seen people, well, it's only 2 hours. Dance recitals, it's not going to be 2 hours. I mean, even if it is 2 hours, just stop and restart. If you know it's going to go over 2 hours, film for an hour, stop, restart. Now you go for another 2 hours. You're shooting for 3 hours and you've only stopped once. So that's kind of silly there too. So anyway, the Z9 shoots basically unlimited record times. It shoots 4K unlimited record times. It shoots RAW. It shoots all these things. It's getting 4K 60p. There's really, for the price point, I don't know why anybody would buy the Canon R5-C in place of the Z9. The Nikon Z9 does everything the R5-C does and more. It doesn't have the restrictions of it's got N-Log. We haven't even gotten into the batteries and stuff. So let's get into that. So the Nikon said, well, look, we're going to put in our bigger battery. So it has this EN-EL18, which is the much larger battery that powers the lenses, powers the camera, and doesn't run out for hours. You can shoot for literally hours of video and the camera won't die. They can shoot. I've seen reports of people shooting photos all day and not even using 10% or 20% of the battery because it's such a huge battery. That's what the Canon should have done. They should have released they should come out with the R5-C, but with a new bigger battery, instead of limiting. Well, you don't get autofocus in these zoom lenses, in these bigger lenses, because you're going to need another power source. Well, now you're adding in a permanent power source to a camera that's supposed to be portable, be able to pick it up, move around, and now you have to use a separate audio. I mean, there's way too many drawbacks and too many things. This camera would have been great about 3 years ago, but today there's just no excuse for it compared to Nikon Z9, when you can get a Z9 that will do all the things that camera does, basically all the same things, but it doesn't have the limitations of the no IBIS, or having to need a separate power source just to run the lenses and have autofocus. Oh, and it doesn't have autofocus for vehicles and for other things. And somebody said, well, that doesn't really need it. It has human eye auto detect and human Look, when you're doing interviews, you got the camera set on the tripod. If you're doing run and gun, that's when you need. It's a small camera. It's not a huge camera. It's actually a camera made for run and gun, news gathering, ENG news gathering, electronic news gathering. It's made for that, and it doesn't do animal or vehicle autofocus, which the Z9 doesn't have those limitations. It does animal and automobile autofocus. So it focuses on the cars, it focuses on the birds and the animals, the dogs, and it focuses on people, and it doesn't have the limitations. So why would you get the camera that has the limitations it's supposed to be for, run and gun situations? Run and gun means you're carrying the camera and you're running and gunning, you're getting your shots, and you're letting the camera autofocus on what it needs to autofocus on. So it just seems like a lot of compromises for a camera. It just doesn't, it makes zero sense to buy this camera. So I thought I would go over these things and discuss some of these things with you guys. And you guys tell me what you think. Do you think the R5-C is just like a extremely crippled cinema camera? I mean, why just for a little bit more you can buy a Nikon Z9, get all the lenses and everything works, and you don't have to have compromises on IBIS. You can pick it up and take it off the monopod and get your smooth, you know, a Steadicam like shot without having to worry about it having some kind of electronic stabilization, or, you know, it actually has built-in IBIS. It gets smoother shots. Or do you think the R5-C is a fantastic camera and it doesn't need those things, and you're always going to record separate audio, and you're always going to have a different way of recording where you don't need to worry about taking it off, and you're always going to throw it on a gimbal? I don't know. To me, it seems like it's got limitations that are unneeded. It's got unneeded limitations that Canon just crippled it. Again, with the cripple hammer, they crippled it to protect their other. See, Nikon doesn't have to protect its cinema line because it doesn't have a cinema line, and that's one of the positive things. It's neither Sony has a cinema, you know, the Sony has cinema line of cameras. Canon has cinema line of cameras, so they have to cripple their cameras to keep you from, you know, wanting to upgrade to the next one. There is no upgrade for Nikon. That's it. So they threw everything at it, and like I said before, they're just going to put everything in it. Comment below. Let me know what you guys think. Anyway, it was just a little quick discussion I thought I'd have. I just thought I'd make a little video here. So anyway, YouTube, take it easy. Comment below. Let's talk about this. What do you guys think about the Canon? Do you think it's a dud? Do you think they really screwed up, or do you think it's going to be a fantastic camera and that it's made for cinema stuff, and this is what you do? You are we're so used to recording with separate audio recorders that's all you need is separate audio recorders. I'll let you later, YouTube. Take it easy. I'm out. Have a good day.